Interesting. How was that training? I mean, it's gonna be a complicated airplane too. Because I remember
It's old school, man.
Yeah, when we were.
I was gonna say, what are the avionics?
Well, that's the thing. When we were when I was at Envoy and everybody was getting ready to flow to American, because American had those planes back in the days. It was an old school plane. Nobody was like, "Fuck, we don't want to fucking we don't want to fucking go fight that fucking plane, man," because that's a real flying.
Yeah.
It's not, hey, let's turn the autopilot on kind of shit. You gotta learn that shit.
It has autoland.
Does it? I believe it.
Surprisingly.
Oh, the trim? No, just kidding.
So how was it?
The training's cool. It was my first. So I went from a turbo commander, which is like twin turboprop. Max takeoff weight is like 10 325. I don't know why I remember those numbers, but so it's tiny. And I'm jumping into an MD-87. So the training was a big leap. It's first generation EFIS. So it's kind of a glass cockpit, kind of.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
But training was cool, man. I was, funny story. I was with another guy, and they were like, "All right, let's get the session started. Talk to ground, get pushed back from the gate." I'm like, "Dude, I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
I've never done it before."
Yeah.
They're used to getting guys that.
Who's sorry, the reason you said I'm asking this, who's doing the training? Is it like contracted out to?
Well, when we do our type rides and all our recurrent, it's just Delta guys.
That's why they're saying that shit to you.
Yeah, well, you have to do an airline check ride.
Oh shit! Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so you have to get pushed back from the gate. You have to do all that stuff.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
And you have to do an emergency egress with the people and all that stuff.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because it's an airline.
It's all it's in the type, the 21 types. You got to do all that stuff. It's within the regs.
Yeah, we don't have any passengers.
Brace. There's nobody back there.
But you have to do it, and so it was cool for me because I've never done that stuff before.
Yeah, cool, man.
Yeah, and all the emergencies, and it was a good time.
De-ice and all that stuff. You had to do all that stuff too.
We didn't do the de-ice stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, de-ice is. Yeah, just go a little lower. Get in the flames.
Yeah. So basically, profiles, memory items,
and that's where UND came in, also, man.
Yeah.
Profiles, memory items, call outs, checklists.
Yeah.
That's where UND, it just kind of went right back to me. I'm like, I remember this stuff.
That's your airline training right there.
Yeah.
You get that done if you can do those
and
four
I'll
things.
tell you what, UND's got to start paying us. Everybody way out on the podcast,
Or you just branch out on the people you call on here. It's all UND alum.
Well, that's because
true.
all the good people come from UND.
Yeah.
They do a good job. They do.
Absolutely.
My sim partner came from a completely different background and way more experience than I have just as flying, but first kind of time doing an airline type like this.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, he was way behind just because you didn't have that kind of background that I had doing all that call outs and checklists and stuff. So I was like, I felt good. I remember calling Cam and being like, dude, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah. When I went to, it's funny, I have the exact same story. When I went to Envoy, my first jet was an Embraer 145 as an FO, and we went there, and I felt like nobody would tell us what we need to study for. Like, we didn't know what, like, those four things, the call-outs, the profiles, like, it took me like 3 months to figure out, like, what they are. But anyways, the point I was trying to make is that I had another partner, and he was also an FO. And, he was having a very, very hard time, like, figuring out, like, what the profile. So I remember we were going down the runway, we were like 80 knots, and it's like, he looked at me and go, why are we saying 80 knots?
Check.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, you're definitely not going to make it. And he didn't make it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was his background?
He flew helicopter. Very nice guy.
Yeah.
Very nice guy. But same thing, UND, we knew what we were saying while we were saying it. So, so you do like V1 cuts and stuff like that on the MD?
Yeah.
How is that on the...
It's not too bad because it's almost centerline thrust.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
Where they're not hanging off the wing. I mean, it's still a V1 cut. You still have to compensate
all
for
that stuff.
But yeah, I mean, you do the same check ride as you would. I'm sure you do. It's like almost 0-0 viz, and you do V1 cuts, and you have to bring it around and coupled approach, hand flown approach, circle to lands, all that stuff.
Oh, perfect. Okay, cool, man. Cool. All right, so for the airline, after our sim, this is where it's going to get interesting. I'm going to start asking this interesting stuff I'm fascinated about. All right, we all know about his background now. He's a UND, CFI. He got this job. He's a tanker pilot. But there's some fascinating shit coming in here. We'll it is, man. So, an airline pilot, once you're done with the sim, you go what's called IOE. Mm-hmm. Is that what you guys do?
No.
Okay. So what do you do, and what the hell? How is it? Because obviously, Delta can't train you to go fucking dump.
No.
Yeah, I know. That was good. I was upset because I was like, I wanted to ask him that question with the training stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. So what happens after that? After you're done with your sim?
So you're gonna go almost 100% of the time you're going to be a co-pilot.
Yeah.
The first couple seasons, and during that time you're just doing co-pilot duties. You're helping out as much as you can.
Like live flights.
Mm-hmm.
So you immediately go to the sim to. Well, yeah, obviously because it's IOE. Okay, got you.
Yeah, so that's our IOE.
Yeah.
We do spring training where we have to do like 3 drops with the Forest Service, and you have to get carded by the Forest Service. You have to do just a ride with them as a co-pilot.
Carded?
Yeah, so the Forest Service, once you get your type rating, and you have all your time and all that stuff, you still have to do another check ride. That's what pilots
really?
about, right?
Yeah.
So the Forest Service sends out a liaison, and they sit in the jump seat, and they go fly with you, and they observe you being a co-pilot. Once you do that, you get your Forest Service co-pilot card saying, here, you can go out and fly on fires now as a co-pilot.
Yeah, as a co-pilot.
Only.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so the first couple seasons, you're just sitting right seat. You're doing stuff that normal co-pilots would do. You're making radio calls. You're swinging the gear. You're doing flaps.
Okay.
And you're just learning. You know, you're learning how to do stuff. And all the captains we have are good. And so they're teaching you. And so you're sitting in the right seat. And then after a while, you start trading legs, you know, flying to and from the fire. You still can't drop on the fire yet. But you can fly all the way into the FTA fire traffic.
What do you mean?
area
So you can't drop on the fire
as a co-pilot yet. Only the captain can pull the trigger.
Oh,
And
okay.
go down low. And
Until you.
So he's flying.
So, like, let's say it's my leg. I would take off from the airport. I'd fly to the fire.
Mm-hmm.
I'd orbit. If there was a lead plane in front of us, I'd get behind the lead plane. And then as soon as we went, like, live, he would take over, drop down, drop the retardant, come back up, hand the airplane over to me, and then I'd fly back if it was my leg.
Oh.
And so you're doing that for the first couple of years, just learning.
So how does like let's talk about like the pre planning stuff, because I go out, especially even if 135, talk about it in that way. You know, they go out, they get the weather,
Yep.
The weight and balance, you know, the passengers and all that stuff. So obviously none of that stuff really applies. Well, most of it still does apply to you. So assuming somebody has to get the weather, somebody has to say, hey, the fire's over here, and figure out what route you're gonna fly to coordinate it. Like, how does that stuff work? How do you figure that out?
So kind of a normal day is you show up at the tanker base, and there's tanker bases throughout the whole western United States. So in Arizona,
tanker bases. Okay.
In Arizona, there's one at Gateway, Prescott, and Winslow, and so those are just places that are at an airport that can fill up the retardant.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a ton in California, obviously, because it's huge and it's always on fire. There's tons in
more ways than one.
Yeah,
I shouldn't be laughing at that.
It's always on fire. There's Colorado, Utah, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, name it. There's tanker bases strategically placed around these geographical locations. So let's say we're at Gateway Tanker Base, and I show up in the morning, usually at 9. If there's not an ongoing fire, we'll go out. Our crew chief, which is our mechanic that flies with us, we'll go out, do the walk around. We'll usually fire up the APU, do first flight of the day stuff, just like the airlines.
Yeah.
And then if there's not an active fire going, we'll shut it down, and we'll usually go to like a 9:30 a.m. brief, and they talk about the weather and all stuff. But it's all the stuff you looked at as a pilot in the morning, anyways. And then if there's nothing going on that day, man, you get the recliner out and fire up Netflix.
Just like a firefighter.
Yeah, it's just like being at a station, a city fire station. Yeah, it's the same thing. And
Chilean foosball.
Yeah, man, working out.
They're always cooking food and working
food,
out.
Yeah, man. I've seen it.
And then either if you're in California, it'll be on a loudspeaker. But in most of the places, someone will just come in and be like, "Hey, Tanker 103, you got a dispatch." So you're like, "Shit!" Pack up your iPad and get everything going and run out to the plane, get it fired up, and they'll give you a run sheet, what we call it, and it's got usually the fire name, the coordinates of the fire, and then the frequencies who you're going to talk to on the fire.
Yeah.
And man, while you're doing that, plugging stuff in the FMS or iPad, they're loading up the retardant, and you're looking at weather real quick, see if there's any thunderstorms, and you're going.
So the retardant's like waiting for fuel, basically. Somebody's pumping that sucker, you're just waiting for it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm assuming there's like a gauge that said, okay, we have this amount of and what it is.
It's 3. Yeah. So our plane can take 3,000 gallons no matter where we go. So it's like 27,000 pounds.
Oh, okay.
Some of the other airplanes for different vendors are limited on weight depending on like density, altitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're running out of like Prescott or something.
Yeah.
But the MD, we can take a full load anywhere. Yeah.
Wow,
So then we get loaded up. They tell us we're loaded, and we have everything plugged in, and then we just cruise out.
Cool, man. And do What do you wear? You wear like a fire retardant?
Yeah, we have to wear a Nomex flight suit.
Nomad flight suit.
Mm-hmm.